Most people waste months, if not years, chasing bad HMO deals. I didn't. I built a £4 million HMO portfolio within 3 years using one simple tool, my deal analyzer. Today, I'm giving you a behind the scenes look at the exact deal analyzer I still use to find profitable HMO deals and how it helped me pull money out of deals again and again. If you're serious about scaling your HMO portfolio fast, this is where it all starts. Let's dive in. All right, so I'm going to run through a deal that I actually did. So it's actually a live deal that I did. So I'm going to run through the numbers and show you how the deal analyzer works and how I, in a sense, valued this deal and what I did exactly with this project and what the numbers look like. So this was a property, I guess, to give you some context, the background behind this property. This is a property in the West Midlands, and I looked to acquire houses and convert them into multiple units. In this particular case, it was 7 HMO rooms consisting of 4 en-suite and 3 studio rooms. So again, we'll kind of come onto the numbers and stuff later on in terms of like rents and stuff across the two. But in essence, this was a house that I had to go through planning. So again, on the front end, structured a subject to planning gain on me being able to buy the house, go through planning, and on getting planning, actually committing to buying the house. So that was kind of how I structured most of my deals, just to mitigate the risk of buying a house and not getting the planning, because to get 7 rooms in the house, you have to go through planning. Unfortunately, if you are in an article area, then you have to go through planning as well to get the planning gain. But for me, fortunate enough, I was always going for 7 bedrooms and upwards. So I always kind of went through planning and kind of learned the skill of going through planning and acquiring planning on properties. So literally every single one of my properties has planning gain to get planning gain above 7 occupants in the property. So anyways, coming back to the numbers, now you've got I guess a background of what this is. This, like I was saying, 7-bedroom HMO. We had a budget cost at the time of £110,000 to convert a house into and again, to give you more context on the house, this is a 3-bedroom Victorian house into a 7-bedroom HMO. We did loft conversions and rear extension on this property as well at the time. So the refurb cost obviously is definitely, I was in the lower end now compared to today's market. We're looking at like 150k for that type of similar conversion. But like on the back end as well, the valuation is definitely higher now for a 7-bedroom HMO as well. So the numbers have shifted all in the right direction. Rents have increased since the time as well. So it's all kind of balanced out even with the increase in refurb costs. So next thing on the list, the furniture budget. So furnishing the house, again, 7-bedroom HMO, easily attainable within a 10k budget. So that's what we had kind of put in place, and we kind of got dialed in. A lot of the budget goes towards the furnishing of the rooms. So beds, chest of drawers, tables, TVs, that kind of stuff, which pretty much what you see in my videos. That's kind of where a majority of the budget will go towards, and the rest are kind of the communal areas, so fridge freezers. Obviously, if I've got kitchenettes as well, then obviously the microwaves in those places and the fridge freezers as well. So it could be between 10 to 12. In this case, it was 10k. Moving on, architects, planning, building regs, all coming around 2.5k. Again, I did have this leverage of being able to kind of get favorable rates with some of the like professional fees I had, just due to the leverage I had and the network I had to be able to introduce these people to more work in essence. But whatever number that is for you, obviously you'd put that in terms of obviously the survey valuation. So some might argue, Alpha, how are we paying £3,000? So I pay for a Red Book valuation always on my HMO conversions, and so they are definitely more pricey than your standard valuations that you'd pay for your standard properties. So this is in the regular valuation that you get. This is kind of working out what the front end number is, i.e. your purchase price, your refurb cost, and also what the property going to value on the back end as well. So that's the cost for that. We always has had a 10% contingency. In reality, the refurb cost was always a fixed cost. We always had a fixed price contract, and that for me, that was big, and the banks wanted to kind of see that and were more favorable when they had their builder who was willing to sign on a fixed price contract, meaning that they can't deviate from that price point. But again, we still have the budget in just in case. Rather be safe than sorry. Obviously, if I don't use it, it makes it do a lot more healthy. So let's say, for example, this was 0, you can see how it jumps to 45% ROI. We put it back in, we're back down to 37%. So still nonetheless, still a great deal. I think in this particular project, I don't think we even use this contingency. But again, the way this kind of deal analyzer works, there are these kind of costs that are kind of hidden as well, I guess, which is like, for example, utilizing the house. So you can have some utility bills for the time of the refurb. So if you've got a 4-month refurb, there is a utility bill you're paying for that duration of time. There's council tax you're paying for that duration of time as well. And these are like one-off costs that are going to happen during that build phase. So the numbers kind of thereabouts are kind of helped across having these contagions and these numbers within your analyzer. So it kind of accounts for these kind of, I like to call them miscellaneous kind of events or things that you have to pay outside of your kind of normal stuff. So I guess moving on, the kind of next set of fees or things to consider. Obviously, if you've got sourcing fees, and in my case, I wasn't using sourcing agents or anything like that. But in essence, the fees I'm considering are stamp duty. Again, stamp duties change a lot just based on governments coming in and changing the regulations around what they think we should be paying for stamp duty. So that can fluctuate, hence calculate yourself and see what's kind of the latest. Legal fees, so my solicitors, again, quite favorable rates, but I generally will say 2K for that type of property is kind of what you should be paying. Again, I was having favorable rates with that. HMO license is quite relatively cheap, £500 in the area, and then also insurance as well for the property for the year, £600. So kind of bringing my total costs to being 411,000. Again, we'll kind of come into a bit more of a breakdown on that. So just talking about financing costs, right? So this is kind of on the development side of things, the bridge and loan side of things. I know we talk a lot about like how much money do we actually get from the bank when we're buying, how much deposit you need to put down. In this case, you've got 34% is the deposit I'm putting down, so £90,000. The bank is lending me £174,000 towards the purchase of £265,000. They're obviously borrowing me the 100% of the development finance, which is coming up to 120, obviously including the contingency within that. So, and then the interest being 0.8%. Obviously, I'm giving you actuals here, which again is we only use the development loan for 5 months. So in reality, there is this kind of, I guess, switching numbers in terms of like on day one, the lender would expect to factor in 12 months worth of interest, and that would obviously make the numbers different. But to kind of prove what the numbers will be like, assuming I hit these targets, which in my reality I did actually achieve 5 month loan borrowing, i.e. how long I took the loan out for. So I only paid 5 months worth of interest on this particular deal. So that's what it turned out to be. So the numbers are a bit skewed in terms of like, for example, how much money do you need? It will be slightly different if factor in, let's just put the numbers in to kind of show out what would happen. So in essence, the numbers slightly change, your ROIs drop, but that's if you are taking the loan. So as you imagine, you're paying more interest, you pretty much doubled your interest because you're using double the time. So we want to make sure that we are kind of representing actually what's going to happen in reality, which in my case was 5 months on this project. All right, so moving on. So total loan, obviously 306 on this. You have something called an arrangement fee, which you pay to obviously the loan you're borrowing, which is basically a facility fee. Usually about 2%. Again, can be different depending on what lender you're working with. Apple broker fee here. We generally don't really pay broker fee. Something you're charged for like an application fee just to kind of make sure you're serious and progress the application. So generally, I've always paid as little as 250, if not even zero. To fair, in most cases zero. On a refinance is where maybe I might pay some sort of application fee to get the new application in. So your facility drawdown, so it's basically how much money you're going to potentially draw down during that duration, excluding interest or that stuff, because that's not facility drawdown, that's just a facility that's put on the side. So just pretty much your money, the money actually you receive towards your purchase and also the refurb. So all right, moving on. I guess this is just more metrics. So what's your loan to GDV? So this is kind of showing you how healthy you are. These are the maximums banks will like to consider. So you can see that this is well below the threshold. To be fair, sometimes this is low, I would say, in reality as well. So but the point here is you want to kind of have a baseline of where you are. So 61% loan to GDV, which is good, meaning that if I refinance, I'm good to pull money out on this. And the banks usually want to even remain around 70% compared to like your refinance. So it's good to see that that's obviously way below what they need. And then we come on to the rental side of things. So if we are obviously having 7 rooms split off 4 ensuite rooms and 3 studios, this is the breakdown of the time, 550 for each room for the ensuite rooms. Now an ensuite room could easily be 625 for the same room that was built a while back. So the market's definitely changed. Studio rooms again have gone up to £800 depending on the size of rooms. And again, if you just see my properties, I've got very sizable rooms, and it's the benefit again of having that long-term thinking of like, well, I don't want to buy a smaller property because there's only so much you can charge rent-wise for that room. Because if people are bringing new properties to the market and you've provided a property where the rooms are crammed, they're small, there's only so much you can charge for that room. Whereas the large rooms, as the rents go up, you can keep increasing that because you're getting the best rooms and best size rooms in the marketplace. So if the rents have gone up in the area, then your rents can keep going up for the large rooms, and anyone who wants large rooms will pay the premium for that large room. Versus small rooms, there's only, like I said, there's only so much you can charge. Like people have said, this doesn't make sense. I don't might as well pay a bit more and get a large room and get more space and get more for my money. So that's kind of the breakdown. So monthly income for this is 4,300. Obviously annually that's £51,000 coming from a single property, which again is amazing in terms of rental income. Let's talk about, I guess, the deductions and what actually brings it down to when you start kind of factoring things like voids. So again, 10% void. And again, someone argues, should it be higher or less? It depends on where you are and how good you are providing great accommodation. Because if you are providing great accommodation, you bought good locations, then your voids can be minimal. And for me, generally speaking, like my whole type portfolio, like we barely have voids. We're like never lower than 90% voids in a year. We kind of hover around between 90 to 95%, just month on month. And generally speaking, people are moving in, moving out. It's literally a streamlined process to getting people and getting new people into the property, because I bought on unfavorable roads where people want to rent. And so we never really struggle to rent. And obviously there's times in the year people are moving out of the property, can be more challenging, like Christmas periods. So like again, the agents know that we don't want to be letting people out of contracts around, or we don't want to be signing contracts where we kind of end up at the end of those dead periods where we might have a month, a whole month, 2 months even of getting room refilled. So again, understanding your market, knowing how the game's being played in your market to ensure that your voids are minimum, and therefore seeing the maximum rental income you can achieve from that property. So total project costs, like I was saying over there, back over here, £411,000 for the total project costs. Obviously financing costs for your deal, so just kind of show you the numbers and kind of the calculation behind that. And then also kind of amended project costs, which basically is kind of factor in the cost of the interest and everything else involved in that. Money needed is a very, very key point, because this is kind of the total capital required to actually do this deal. So it's a mixture of your deposit money, a proportion of your development loan. So obviously they usually will give you about 20-25%. Let's say the bank's minimum drawdown is £30,000, and obviously you work out what ratio of percentage is that against your total loan. So, and then your other costs as well, factoring that in. So that's kind of all the money you're needing to do this deal. So that's the numbers on that. And then in terms of obviously our end valuation, it being 500k on this property. Again, we've got already valuation done, so we know what the end valuations are going to be before even purchasing the property. And then also obviously refinancing at 75% loan to value, again, you're going to get £375,000 back. So again, there is element of mortgage fees when doing your application again. So that's factored in. And then in terms of your ongoing mortgage payments, so again, at the time, 5%, you're now looking at about 6% in today's current market. So again, that's what the numbers were for. So 1,005, and then your management fees and also monthly ongoing expenses, again, factored 25% on this, which kind of, if you kind of take an average, so £100 per room for electrics and gas, water, bills, plus internet, £100 per room, so 7 rooms, £700. Council tax about £200-300 depending where you are, again, or how big the house is. But generally speaking, that's kind of the ongoing monthly expenses on the property. And then obviously you've got your cash flow position, so how much net money are you actually getting from the property, which on this one is 1,600. So again, very healthy on this. Obviously this can fluctuate based on maintenance as well, so like your monthly ongoing expenses, it just depends. For example, I have a fixed cost of 7% management fee within this number as well. So again, that's quite low for management. Again, I leverage my network and what I can bring to the table, and so the agents found it favorable to give me favorable terms on my management. And this is from day one, from like my first few properties. This wasn't even me building a portfolio and then trying to leverage the portfolio to say, hey, can we get a favorable rate because I have a sizable portfolio of you guys? I just negotiated on day one, kind of the long-term vision, what I bring to the table, and got that deal done. So benefits me in terms of what I see as a net cash flow for my properties. So annual cash flow just being under £20,000 and money left in the deal being £54,000, which provides me a 37% ROI. So this is a healthy HMO deal, pretty much a 3-year return in terms of capital put into this deal. Like I said, numbers will fluctuate. Just like there's obviously you can go to the nth degree of trying to work out every little bit and pieces around what you're putting in it. Like, but the idea here is to kind of understand, okay, does this work conceptually in terms of like what you're trying to achieve? Some will plus and minuses here and there in terms of the numbers, but again, we don't want to be over analytical to assessing each deal you're doing. These aren't the most large, on a large scale type projects where it can be crippling if you're not working to the penny. On like large developments, yes, you want to work to the penny because these are like times 10, times 20, times 30, times 40 units, and that has a ripple effect across your entire development scheme. But these are, in my opinion, small developments compared to those ones. So these are kind of the numbers personally I have factored into my deals. I know some people go above and beyond and start looking at taxes and what. I'm like, you're overcomplicating it because you're trying to assess things that are dependent on other factors. Like if your company is not making profits, then you're not going to be paying taxes. So trying to work out what a tax bill is going to be on that, on your rental income, is like, what are you doing? It doesn't. You've got a long way away if you have tax efficient measures in place from paying tax on your rental income. If you know what you're doing, you've got a long way to pay tax on these rental incomes you're making. So like I said, this is personally what I've done. There's no right or wrong. Personally, this is just what I have used to analyze if this deal makes sense for me to pull the trigger on or not pull the trigger on. And these are kind of the factors I've considered when going into this. Like I said, there will be some costs that will creep in, i.e. paying brokers on the front end, paying brokers on the back end, for example, utility costs during your build. These are, for me, these are minuscule numbers in terms of how it affects the deal. Those numbers aren't going to kill a deal. So just bear that in mind, that some of these factors aren't necessarily being worked out, but I'm aware that this exists, and I've just chosen that they're not as important figures for me to decide if this deal makes sense for me or not. So hence why you might not see every little nth degree of cost within this, but you can build this out into your analyzer if you want to know, if you're more analytical and want to know how that would impact the deal. But like I said, that's just preference. But hope you guys got some value from this. So that's pretty much it, guys. This is a live deal showing you how I, in essence, analyze my 7-bedroom HMO and the kind of ROIs I receive on my properties, and also what kind of money I leave in my HMOs. In this particular case, I'm getting back almost just a bit less than £80,000 because I put £130,000 into this. So yes, I'm getting about £80,000 going into this deal back for me to run into my next deal, and then raise more money to be able to do more deals and scale further.